بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وعملا وهدى وتقى ورشادا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم فقهنا في الدين وعلمنا التأويل. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من علم لا ينفع ومن قلب لا يخشع ومن نفس لا تشبع ومن دعوة لا تسمع. نعوذ بك اللهم من هؤلاء الأربع. أما بعد، فحياكم الله جميعا في الدرس الرابع في شرح أعلام السنة المنشورة في اعتقاد الفرقة في اعتقاد الطائفة الناجية المنصورة المؤلف للشيخ حافظ بن أحمد بن علي الحكمي رحمه الله رحمة واسعة وأسكنه فسيح جناته. In the previous درس يا إخوان alhamdulillah we went through the evidences and the proofs or the methodology of proving the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through three of the four sources of knowledge, and namely the fitrah and reason or intellect and testimony. With regards to fitrah, I just want, just before we get into the next questions, I want one way through which we can prove the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala using fitrah. Anyone can tell us or answer this question now. One way through which we can establish the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and prove it to those who deny it through fitrah.
The existence of morality and the moral principles being there.
And how do you use this as an evidence? Like, how does this indicate or
Yeah, I mean the fact that we have things that despite people coming from different backgrounds, different regions in the world, they would all generally agree to a common understanding of things that are good and things that are not. For example, telling lies is considered bad all over the world, and being truthful is a good quality. So this kind of points to the fact that it's not something that is subjective. If it was depending on people's location or culture, then it wouldn't have taken place, but it does. So it has to point to an objective reasoning that is like given to us by not by us ourselves or by our culture or by our surroundings. Rather, the only way we can logically explain it that there is a being who created us, who put this into us.
Jazakallah khair. Beautifully articulated. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. Mumtaz. Jiddan, jiddan. One way in which we can use reason to prove the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hi, Ikhwan. Anyone can go for it لا بأس.
Okay, I mean, I don't want to be
لا بأس خلاص ما في مشكلة. جزاك الله خير that you waited until so that you could give others a bit of chance. If they're not responding, خلاص, then you're the one. Inshallah.
Okay, so there, for reason we can go from the angle of everything that comes into existence having a cause, like the problem of there being infinite regress, or the fact that we are here points to a being that is independent and from where the chain kind of starts, chain of events. So that's one way we can use our reasoning to come to a conclusion that there's a creator.
Jazakallah khair. Barakallah feek. And finally, testimony.
We can prove it by revelation.
Revelation, how does it مثلا who is testifying to us that Allah exists? Who testified it to us?
The Prophet
Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Okay, so the only thing that needs to be done here with regards to testimony is to verify the source. Yani the Prophet ﷺ being a truthful person. Alhamdulillah. And there are abundant. Yani there are countless adillah that show us that the Prophet ﷺ was indeed a true prophet, and he's not someone who is lying upon Allah. Ma'adallah. Tamam. So as long as that is the case, then and the source is true, so whatever facts that he tells us about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are true as well. So this is how we use testimony. The Prophet ﷺ has told us things about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he's been told by another a truthful source, that is Jibreel alayhi salam, or directly being inspired by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in some instances. وهكذا. طيب ممتاز جدا. طيب نبدأ الآن يا إخوان بسم الله بالسؤال الثالث اليوم. السؤال الثالث طبعا يا إخوان, as we told you before that we summarize the book sometimes. We also sometimes we do away with some questions because there are similar questions. There are questions similar to them, so we just suffice with one of those similar questions, or we sometimes add them up, like in question 8 and 10 we're going to add them up and make it one question. So this is something that we'll be doing. If you want to take notice of what went on, then you can also keep up with the original version of the Arabic book, so that you can know if there has been something that we have made a change. But I cannot, every time we make some change from the book, it is difficult to let all the students or make them aware of it. So if you are concerned with this, you can inshallah compare the Arabic version with the one that we are going through. We have, as mentioned before, especially when it comes to the Arabic text, the one in golden font or the brown font is the Shaykh's kalam, and if we add anything, we write it in blue font or dark blue font, so that inshallah will make it clear. Even to an extent that even as-Su'al Thalatha or Su'al Thalith, this is an addition from our side, so we wrote it in blue font. So if you want to know which kalam belongs to the Shaykh and which is an addition, then you can distinguish using the color. طيب يقول في السؤال الثالث. طيب أحد يقرأ؟ أخانا علي تريد أن تقرأ؟
Yes, I can if nobody else wants to.
تفضل.
طيب. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. قال المصنف السؤال الثالث: ما معنى العبد؟ جواب.
قال المصنف من أدب القراءة, from the etiquettes of reading is that the مصنف تترحم عليه. نعم. تسير رحمه الله. أحسنت.
بسم الله. قال المصنف رحمه الله: ما معنى العبد؟ جواب: العبد إن أريد به المعبد أي المذلل المسخر، فهو بهذا المعنى شامل لجميع المخلوقات من العوالم العلوية والسفلية. وإن أريد به العابد محب المتذلل خص ذلك بالمؤمنين الذين هم عباده المكرمون وأولياؤه المتقون الذين لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون.
أحسنت. فتح الله عليك. يقول هنا الشيخ: ما معنى العبد? What is the meaning of عبد? What is عبد? Because he will move on gradually to what is عبادة and then the مسائل of shirk. Just to give you an overview of the book is going to move in the order of the masail mentioned in the famous hadith of Jibreel alayhi salam. And after he is done with ibadah and a couple of other questions, then he's going to move in accordance with the hadith of Jibreel: Islam, Iman, Ihsan. Everyone knows the famous hadith of Jibreel alayhi salam, in which Jibreel alayhi salam came to the Prophet in the form of a human being, asked him a few questions. From amongst those questions was mal Islam, mal Iman, mal Ihsan. The Prophet answered: Islam أن تشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمد رسول الله وتقيم الصلاة وتؤتي الزكاة وتصوم رمضان وأن تحج البيت إن استطعت إليه سبيلا. Now, so he will start with أن تشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمد رسول الله. Now, in شهادة أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمد رسول الله, there are masail related to Tawheed al-uluhiyya, يعني the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be worshipped. So all of these masail related to the worship of Allah, they will be mentioned first. Then he will move on to the shahada, or that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the messenger, and what does this require from us, etc. What are the requisites for this to be a valid testimony, etc. Then he will move on, and he mentioned a couple of questions, a few masail related to salah, zakat, sawm, hajj, yani not into the fiqhiyat of these things, rather yani masail related to our beliefs. Yani what should our belief be? What is the hukum or ruling of a person who leaves out salah, etc. Once he's done with these, then he will move on to iman. Al-iman an tu'mina billahi wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rusulihi wal yawmil akhir wal qadari khayrihi wa sharrihi. So we'll start with al-iman billah. So he will explain tawheed al-rububiyyah, uluhiyyah, asma wa sifat. Then he will expound on al-asma wa sifat, etc. Then he will move on to billahi wa malaikatihi. Then he'll move on to al-malaika, the angels, and how what our belief with regards to the angels should be, etc. Questions related to angels. Then the questions related to kutub, what our beliefs should be with regards to the kutub. Then rusul, what our beliefs should be pertaining to the rusul, etc. Until al-yawm al-akhir, and then he will mention things that will occur on the day of judgment. Mathalan, the hawd, the mizan, the sirat, etc. He'll mention all of these things, matters. He will also mention then masail related to al-qadar, wal-qadari khayrihi wa sharrihi, and this is how we will move. And finally, we will move on to ihsan, and then again, then he will bring questions, other questions from related to aqidah, مثلا bid'ah, sunnah, sahaba, their مثلا their status, etc. So this is generally the Shaykh will move in the order of the hadith of Jibreel alayhi salam, the famous hadith of Jibreel. Right now we haven't yet entered into the hadith of Jibreel. Right now this is sort of a muqaddimah, a sort of a preamble, before we get into the hadith of Jibreel. So right now he's going to talk about a little bit about ibadah and abd. So first question is ma ma'na al-abd? What is the meaning of abd? Al-abdu in urida bihi al-mu'abbad. Now he mentions here that there are two meanings that that the word abd can imply. The first meaning is everything that is subject to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that has been subjugated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's under the control of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, under his kingdom. If that is the case, then every creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is abd, is a slave to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? Does this meaning exist in the Quran? It does exist in the Quran. طيب. Where does it exist? It exists, one of the places that I know from the Quran is Surah Maryam. In Surah Maryam, if you have your phones with you and you have Mus'haf in the phone, if you open Surah Maryam and the last page of Surah Maryam, or the second last page, because there are 3 lines on the next page as well. So the second last page, you can say, open the second last page and find an ayah where it says that everything is an abd, or is a slave to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In Surah Maryam, on the second last page, find an ayah that says that every creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a slave to Allah, and it's subject to his will and under his mulk, malakut, and submits to his will. Surah Maryam, second last page. And which contains the ayahs 77 to 95. Anyone? Ayah 93. Ahsant. Ayah 93. What does the ayah say, brother Uwais?
I read the ayah.
نعم. Read the ayah. Recite the ayah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم من همزه ونفخه ونفثه إن كل ما في السماوات والأرض إلا آتي الرحمن عبدا.
أحسنت. إن كل من في السماوات والأرض إلا آتي الرحمن عبدا. there is none in the heavens and the earth. يعني none in the heavens and the earth, except that it comes and it will return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in full submission. Abdan, it's considered as a slave and to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala subjected as well. In kullu man fi as-samawati wal ardi illa ati ar-rahmani abdan. Ahsant. طيب. فتح الله عليك. طيب. So this is one of the meanings of abd, someone who is subject to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فهو بهذا قال إن أريد بالعبد المذلل المسخر. مذلل مسخر means someone who is subject to the will of Allah subhanahu. مذلل مسخر, مسخر subjugated. So he is subject to the will of Allah. Then if that is the meaning, فهو بهذا المعنى شامل, it's comprehensive and encompassing لجميع المخلوقات, for all of the creations. من العوالم. عوالم هنا جمع عالم. عوالم is جمع عالم. So whether it's the heavenly world or the earthly world, العوالم العلوية يعني the ones the world above. العلوية, the worlds that are above, والسفلية, the worlds that are below. Now what does عوالم mean? يعني just like مثلا in Surah Al-Fatiha, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, and Alameen here refers to worlds. By worlds it refers to the genus of the creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just like you say the world of jinn, the world of humans, the world of birds, the world of kada animal, the world of angels, the world of, so each one of the creation its genus, its type, its jins can be referred to as the world of that creation. That's the meaning of alam. So al-awalim al-ulwiyya sufli, yani the creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that are in the heavens and that are those that are in the earth. All of them are considered as ibad ar-Rahman and the slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because they're subject to the will of Allah. The other meaning of abd is وَإِنْ أُرِيدَ بِهِ الْعَابِدْ الْمُحِبُّ الْمُتَذَلِّلِ, if it means the worshipper, al-muhib, the one who loves Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-mutadhallil, the one who is humble and he humbles himself towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tadhallala yatadhallalu, to humble yourself, to bring yourself down and bow down and to humble yourself, whether physically or figuratively, to humble yourself before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is mutadhallil. If that is the meaning intended from abd, فَخُصَّ ذَلِكَ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ, then it is specific, it is made specific to the believers. الَّذِينَ هُمْ عِبَادُهُ الْمُكْرَمُ, who are the slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the honored slaves of Allah. Mukram is the one who is honored. Akramahu yukrimuhu, to honor someone. Mukram is the ism maf'ul, yani the one who is honored. وَأَوْلِيَاؤُهُ الْمُتَّقُونَ, and they are the allies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who are fearful of Allah, who are pious. الَّذِينَ لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. على كل حال, al-khulasa, the summary, abd has two meanings. One is the one who is subject to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and is under his control. From this aspect, or if this is the meaning implied, then every creation of Allah is an abd. And the second meaning of abd is the worshipper and the one who loves Allah and the one who humbles himself before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If that is the meaning that is being implied here, then it is specific to the believers who have believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. طيب. Now, before we read this, the next question, before we read the addition that we made, I want you all to contemplate some things. So that's why I'm going to hide this for now, so that you could answer some questions that I will ask you. يلا اقرأ يا أخي السؤال الثاني، السؤال الرابع.
السؤال الرابع: ما هي العبادة؟ جواب: العبادة هي اسم جامع لكل ما يحبه الله ويرضاه من الأقوال والأعمال الظاهرة والباطنة.
طيب ممتاز. لحظة. هنا. Okay. Next question is متى يكون العمل عبادة? When is an action an ibadah? Now you need to understand what the Shaykh wants to conclude here, or what are the results that we are trying to gain from these two questions. One of the results that we're trying to gain from these questions is to determine when an action is ibadah. Once you determine when an action is ibadah, then you can determine when an action is shirk and when it is not shirk. So, because we know that shirk is to perform an ibadah for someone besides Allah, right? In order to determine when someone has committed shirk and when someone has not committed shirk, it is very important to determine when an action is ibadah. So that if an action that qualifies as an ibadah is performed for someone besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we can say it's shirk akbar. However, if it does not qualify as an ibadah and it is being performed for someone other than Allah, then you cannot say it's shirk akbar. Might be shirk asghar, might be just mubah, permissible, etc. Sahih? So what I'm trying to bring your attention to here is that it is extremely important for a talib ilm, for an alim, for anyone who wants to know the rulings of things, to understand when an action is ibadah and when an action is not ibadah. Okay? This is for ruling. This is for ruling. Okay? For ruling whether a particular action is shirk or not shirk. Right. There are other purposes of defining ibadah. Ibadah is not just defined just to be able to issue a ruling whether it's a particular action is shirk or not shirk, or whether it is an ibadah or not ibadah. There are other purposes as well. So one of the purposes of defining ibadah or knowing what ibadah is, to know which actions will you be rewarded for. What are the actions you will be rewarded for? You see, now there is it's a completely different purpose to define ibadah. First, the purpose was to determine when an action is shirk or not shirk. So you need to be very careful, and you need to check when is it considered as the ritual ibadah. On the other hand, sometimes the purpose of defining ibadah is to know when or what actions will be rewardable or will be rewarded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because a lot of good actions, you are rewarded for a number of actions, some which are ritual ibadah, some which are not ritual ibadah. They're just good gestures that you give that you perform for the slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah rewards you for it. So is this also considered an ibadah? Yes, it is considered an ibadah because you will be rewarded for it. Now, ya ikhwan, nati ila at-ta'rif. Now let's come to the definition here. I told you two purposes. One is to determine when it will be shirk and not shirk, and the other purpose is to know when it is an action that you will be rewarded for. After reading and understanding this definition of ibadah, you will tell me which purpose does this definition fulfill. Does it fulfill the purpose of determining when an ibadah, when an action is shirk or not shirk, or does it only fulfill the purpose of knowing when an action is rewarded and when it is not rewarded for? قال الشيخ رحمه الله هنا. This is the definition of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah رحمه الله. This is the definition of Ibn Taymiyyah. He has put it the way he has mentioned it in his works. قال رحمه الله العبادة هي اسم جامع. It is a comprehensive. اسم جامع. جامع means comprehensive, encompassing, encompasses. طيب. لكل ما يحبه الله ويرضاه. For everything that Allah loves and is pleased with. من الأقوال والأعمال الظاهرة والباطنة. Whether it is statements or actions, whether it is outward actions or statements like doing dhikr, it's an outward statement, right? It's something that can be heard, that can be seen, etc. أعمال الظاهرة, you're praying, doing salah, doing zakah, صوم, hajj, هذه أعمال ظاهرة. أو الباطنة. أقوال باطنة means the beliefs of the heart. أقوال باطنة means the beliefs of the heart. So the beliefs of the heart, just to believe and be certain that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one who deserves to be worshipped. This is a qawlun batin. This is known as qawlul qalb. This is known as the statement of the heart. Beliefs are known as the statements of the heart. These are statements that are batin. Batin means inward statements. The beliefs are inward. They are not something that I can be sure of from the outside. Sahih? فالأعمال فالأقوال الباطنة are the beliefs, and أعمال باطنة, inward actions, refers to things like khawf, fear of Allah, or tawakkul, relying upon Allah, or raja, having hope for mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وهكذا, and etc. طيب. So this first we have explained the definition. Now the definition is saying that everything that Allah loves from you, all actions that Allah loves from you and is pleased with, is considered an ibadah. Now you tell me, ya ikhwan, which purpose does it fulfill? Is this definition going to be helpful for us to know when an amal is considered ibadah, so that if we perform it for someone besides Allah, it will be considered as shirk akbar? Or will this definition only help us determine what are the actions that we can be and we will be rewarded for? Now, which of the two purposes does it fulfill?
The one which helps like us please Allah.
The one which helps?
The one which helps us please Allah.
Please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yani you mean the second purpose, in which we will know what are the actions that please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sahih?
Yes.
Okay. We cannot use this definition to determine when an action is ibadah and when an action is not ibadah, in the sense that if it is performed for someone else besides Allah, it will be considered as shirk akbar, major shirk. Let me give you an example. Giving food, yani distributing food for the sake of Allah, it's an ibadah. صح ولا ما هو صح؟ صحيح. It's an ibadah. طيب. But if you distribute food just because your mother forced you to do so, now this is not for Allah, this is because your mother forced you to do so. Will we say that you are worshipping your mother? Hi, Ikhwan?
No.
لا ما نقول هذا. ما نقول you are worshipping your mother. We will say يعني خلاص, you're doing this for the sake of your mother. It's not an ibadah. You will not be rewarded for. You will be rewarded perhaps for doing it for the sake of your mother, but for the action itself, you're not doing it for Allah. Okay, ممتاز. Smiling to a Muslim brother. تبسمك في وجه أخيك صدقة. Smiling to a Muslim brother of yours, it's considered as صدقة, ibadah. You will be rewarded for it. Okay, you are smiling to your boss to get a promotion. طيب هذا شرك أكبر ولا كيف؟ يا إخوان, will this be considered as shirk akbar, major shirk, worshipping someone besides Allah?
No.
No. لا كيف؟ ما يصلح, ما يمكن يا ريان. This will not be considered as.
Can you explain the question? I didn't get the question.
Yeah, I'm saying smiling to a Muslim person is considered as ibadah because you will be rewarded for it. Sahih? Smiling to a person, sadaqah, you will be rewarded for it. It's an ibadah, it's something that Allah is pleased with. So if you smile not for the sake of Allah, you smile because you want some maslaha, you want to get something from your father, مثلا. You want to get some idiyah from your father, and you want like 100 riyals from your father, and you're smiling at him the whole day. Now this is not for the sake of Allah, this is for your own maslaha, for your interest. But is this going to be considered as ibadah or not? Will it be considered? No, it's not shirk. You will not say that you are worshipping your father because you are smiling, or you are worshipping that money that you want from your father because you're smiling for its sake. لا ما تقول هذا الكلام. صح؟ طيب إذن يا إخوان, أنا أترككم لصلاة المغرب. I'm going for the Maghrib prayer, and I leave you with this question. And I want you to determine or bring up or think about a definition of ibadah which will help us determine when an action, if it is performed for someone besides Allah, it will be considered as shirk. Okay, just think about this mas'ala, think about this issue, and inshallah after the prayer we'll explain it to you بإذن الله تعالى. طيب نقف هنا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. طيب بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد. يا أيها الإخوة نريد منكم مشاركاتكم. We want your participation in يعني what do you guys or what have you thought so far يعني would be a definition of ibadah that would fit to all the rituals if performed for someone besides Allah would amount to shirk akbar. Anything that you have thought of during the break?
Does ibadah does it mean to refer to all the action that please Allah?
But this is going to be problematic, as we said, if we say this is the ibadah, if it is performed for someone besides Allah, it will amount to shirk akbar. So, because like we said before, smiling to a Muslim brother is sadaqah, it pleases Allah. Does not mean that if you smile to a Muslim brother for someone else's sake, not for the sake of Allah, for someone else's sake, this will not amount to shirk akbar. This will not be considered as shirk. So it's ibadah, but performing it for some other reason is not shirk. But if you talk about مثلا dua, making dua is an ibadah. You make dua to someone besides Allah, and it is shirk akbar, مخرج من الملة. مثلا you help someone on the street once for the sake of Allah, it's an ibadah. Once just to show off, it's condemnable, blameworthy, not shirk akbar. But if you مثلا slaughter an animal and you doing this qurban for the sake of Allah, it's an ibadah. If you do it for the sake of some مثلا anyone besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you want to draw closer to him by slaughtering this animal, which is an act of ibadah, then this is shirk akbar. So how to draw the line? And when is an action considered a ritual ibadah? Now, to make things easier for you, I'd like to just show part of the notes. Okay, that is, there are two types of ibadahs, to make things easier. There are two types of ibadahs. There are ritual ibadahs. Ibadah, there is a ritual. There is a rite. R-I-T-E, rite. Ritual. Nusuk. That is performed to seek the pleasure of Allah. And then there are ibadahs that are non-ritual. And non-ritual ibadah means it is not a nusuk, it's not a ritual, it's not like sujood, not like dua, not like qiyam, not like recitation of the Quran, not like slaughtering an animal for the sake of Allah, not like any of these ibadahs. It's a non-ritual action that pleases Allah. Like we mentioned, helping someone, giving charity, مثلا, smiling to your Muslim brother, etc. Removing the harmful things from the street, from the pathways, وهكذا. No, these are not rituals. This is not like sujood. This is not like dua. This is not like dhabh. This is not like making a vow for Allah, nadr. This is not a ritual. This is just a normal action. It's part of the adat. It's an action. Normal, regular stuff that you do. You're doing it for the sake of Allah, so it becomes an ibadah because it pleases Allah. So it's important to make this distinction between the two types of ibadahs, rituals and non-rituals. This definition that is mentioned here above, al-ibadah هي اسم جامع لكل ما يحبه الله ويرضاه من الأقوال والأعمال الظاهرة والباطنة. This is inclusive of both the types of ibadahs. So it includes ibadahs like sujood, ruku', dhabh, dua, and at the same time, it also includes ibadahs like removing harmful things from the pathways, smiling to a Muslim brother, helping him out, giving sadaqah, etc. واضح? The next purpose, so that's what this is. So the purpose of this definition was to define those actions that please Allah. This definition tells us or points to us those actions that please Allah. Okay, so this is why it's called ibadah. Now, ya ikhwan, we want a particular type of ibadah. We want to define a particular type of ibadah, that is number one, that is rituals. Or let us just color this as red. Now we want a particular type of ibadah, that is rituals. Now, why do we want to define these rituals? Because if they are performed for someone besides Allah, they will be considered as shabab.
Major shirk.
Ahsant. Major shirk. Ajib. Okay. Now this is important as well. Now here, the purpose is to understand when an amal is shirk and when it is not shirk. The purpose is not to understand what actions please Allah. The purpose is to understand when an amal can be shirk and not shirk. So now, if you gave it a thought during the prayer break, can you tell us some traits, some characteristics, some qualities of the ibadah that is ritual? When is an action considered a ritual? What is the common denominator in salah, qiyam, ruku', sujood, dhabh, dua, nadhr, etc.? What is the common denominator in all of these?
The rituals, we get them from the life of the Prophet, the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Would that be a common denominator?
There are other rituals, مثلا, that we might not perform in particular, but they are considered as ibadah, that are performed by the pagans, مثلا for their idols. The pagans perform different rituals for their idols, and they're considered as ibadah. So just because the Prophet ﷺ did not ordain it for us or did not legislate it for us, we wouldn't say that this ibadah, this action that these pagans, let's say Red Indians, are performing for their idols, مثلا, this is not to be considered as ibadah, because the Prophet ﷺ did not teach it to us amongst the actions of ibadah. مثلا, they would cut, let us say, to be more specific, مثلا, let's say they sacrifice children to worship Satan, مثلا, to worship shaitan. They sacrifice children. مثلا, sacrificing children is not considered as an ibadah ma'adallah in our sharia, right? But this will be shirk akbar, and this will be considered an ibadah. So there is some other denominator, there's some other common ground between all of these actions.
Would that be now the physical nature, like doing something that requires physical effort?
But then how will you exclude the physical actions that are not rituals? Sahih, that usually these all ibadahs are physical actions, but you also at the same time want to exclude actions that are not rituals, even though they are physical, like giving, like just helping someone or just smiling to someone, as we mentioned these examples before. على كل حال, بعد هذا التأمل, after having contemplated and pondered, now inshallah we are ready بإذن الله تعالى. If someone else wants to contribute, تفضل يا أخي. Always, brother, always, you want to?
Is this referring to like when a person is seeking some benefit or wants to ward off some evil from himself, like he wants like he's buying, he wants some benefit, like he
Jamil, he
wants
wants some benefits. He wants some
he sees
benefits.
some benefit, like maybe he wants like maybe some wealth, or he wants himself to be safe from some diseases. So this is with this intention one is doing that physical act. Like he has a like those who, the mushrikeen who do shirk, like they have this intention that if I don't slaughter this in front, like if I don't slaughter an animal, my children will fall ill. Like so, they are warding this evil, uh, warding off this evil. So they see
Jamil,
some
very good point.
material benefits. So they are buying to the
Okay,
or for
ممتاز جدا, ممتاز. So they're looking for some benefit or to ward off some evil. طيب. But someone might object. Someone might object that even in worldly terms, or even in their actions, a lot of actions that we perform in our daily lives to gain some benefit. Physical actions, مثلا التملق, أو يعني just as the same, مثلا trying to impress those who are above you so that they would benefit you, or مثلا someone who's richer than you, you're trying to impress him so that he benefits you from his wealth. So you're performing some actions that would please him, so that he would share with you some of his wealth مثلا. So someone might object to what Brother always said, but this objection, it can also be refuted in by the following definition. طيب. الشيخ, before whose definition is it? Is it something that I came up with by myself? No. طبعا this is the definition of Shaykh Abdur Rahman ibn Yahya al-Muallimi. Shaykh Abdur Rahman ibn Yahya al-Muallimi is a scholar from the last century, who has mashallah, he's known as Dhahabi Asrihi. He's known as the Dhahabi of his time. Brilliant. He is a master of the hadith sciences, and he has he was not just a master of the hadith sciences, rather he was a jack of all, mashallah. Fiqh, usul al-fiqh, aqidah, hadith, and in particular his mabahith in hadith and his tahqiqat, these are in particular valued. But one of his greatest and most beneficial works in aqidah was his book named as رفع الاشتباه عن معنى لا إله إلا الله. Removing the confusion and vagueness and from the meaning of La ilaha illallah. In this book he establishes the meaning of La ilaha illallah, and he because he's very strong in lugha and tahqiq and hadith, and the conclusions that he comes to are they are the fruit of you can say it. Sometimes some muhaqqiqeen, researchers, they're only good at lugha, so there is a lot of defect left in the hadith. They may be using da'if hadith to support their conclusions. Some might be good at hadith, but they're da'if in lugha, they're da'if in usul al-fiqh and fiqh, so they can't really deduce good conclusions. They cannot infer good results because they are not good at contemplating and deducing ahkam from the texts. But Shaykh Abdur Rahman al-Muallimi, good, mashallah, great at lugha, usul al-fiqh, hadith, everything. So such people, when they research, is always very accurate and very precise. على كل حال, so in this book he firstly researches the meaning of La ilaha illallah مثلا, because La ilaha illallah, what does he want to say, what does he want to do in this book is to define ibadah. La ilaha, ilah means ma'bud. So who is ma'bud, or when is an action considered an ibadah? He does an extensive research on this in two thick volumes, رفع الاشتباه عن معنى لا إله إلا الله, and he concludes and infers a definition after conducting a case study of each of the aqwam mentioned in the Quran. Mentioned in the Quran, مثلا Fir'aun, what was the ibadah of the people of Fir'aun? How did they how are they considered as people who worship Fir'aun? The مثلا ibadah of Qawm Shu'aib or Qawm Ibrahim, or the different aqwam that has been mentioned in the Quran. He does a case study of them, and he determines how and why are they being considered as the worshippers of each of these deities that are there in their qisas. And after these separate case studies, he concludes a beautiful definition that he comes up with, and he says, يقول إن العبادة خضوع اختياري يطلب به نفع غيبي. Now here he has mentioned a few matters that are very important to highlight. Yani, these are the common points in all of the ibadat. Anything that is considered a ritual ibadah, these are matters that must be present in those actions. He says khudu', humility, act of humility and submission. Every ibadah is an act of humility or submission, whether it is physical, whether the person humbles himself physically or he humbles himself metaphorically. So مثلا when you're doing dhikr of Allah, there is glorification, there is ta'zim, veneration of Allah. You're constantly mentioning him with such praises. This is humbling yourself towards Allah, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though there is no physical submission, there is no physical bowing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but there is this figurative, or you can say metaphorical, not figurative, you can say non-physical or metaphorical submission and humility that you are expressing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by uttering these statements of glorification for Allah. So every ibadah has khudu', has humility and submission. Every ibadah is an act of humility or submission. That's very important. طيب. Moving on. ikhtiyariyun. It is carried out willingly. It is done, performed willingly. Why does he mention this? He mentions this because if an ibadah is performed out of compulsion, one is being forced to perform an ibadah, then that is not considered an ibadah. Understand? So it must be something that is ikhtiyari. You're not forced into doing so. No one is threatening to kill you to do sujood, then it will not be an ibadah because it's not done out of your with ikhlas. And we know that إنما الأعمال بالنيات. إنما الأعمال بالنيات. And the niyyah goes away when it's اضطراري, when it is being done out of force and coercion. Then he says يطلب به نفع غيبي. And this is important to understand, not always is this point present in every ibadah. يطلب به نفع غيبي. By this he means that mostly these actions are performed to gain some unseen benefit, غيبي benefit. نفع غيبي, remember. Brother always mentioned a beautiful point when he said benefit and to gain benefit in the word of evil. But even though we understood what he meant, but he did not mention whether it should be ghaibi or not. But the Shaykh's definition is more precise and it's more daqiq, it's very accurate. So he mentions naf'un ghaibi. So ibadah is an action, ya ikhwan, which is performed always or mostly. The Shaykh explains in his book, when he explains the definition, he says no, it's not always the case, but mostly these actions are performed to gain some ghaibi benefit, unseen benefit. So when brother always mentioned some examples, like a person slaughtering a goat for their and whoever they worship, their deity, and he wants to ward off evil. How do you reckon that he expects his deity to ward off the evil from him? from the ghaib, or by physically coming and saving him and treating his disease and protecting him from disease. And if someone sneezes in front of him and he has he's coronavirus مثلا, so this deity will come and protect him physically. لا ما هكذا يريد هو يريد من هذا العمل أن يدفع المعبود عنه الشر بالغيب, that the evil is warded off from the unseen, from the ghaib. That is one of the most important traits of ibadah, that it is performed to gain benefits or to ward off evil through the unseen or metaphysical, you can say, means. طيب. Now let us give examples of this. So now everything will inshallah come into place. So بإذن الله تعالى. Now let's take a couple of examples. Let's take example of dua. I'll give you a few scenarios and you will determine whether, from the definition, you have to use the definition to determine this, inshallah. The first scenario is, barakallahu fikum, scenario number 1, in which a person calls, or let's say he he calls Ahmed, a person named Ahmed, X, person X, Ahmed, who is sitting in front of him, to pass him the water bottle. Okay. This is scenario A, or number 1. Okay. Scenario number 2. Let's just move this here. Scenario number 2 is a person calls upon some dead wali and asks him to grant him a child. Scenario number 3. A person living in Mecca calls upon a person living in Riyadh, مثلا, and asks him to save him from fire. Okay. Fine. Now, in each of these scenarios, when you're calling upon someone or you're asking someone, wherever there is talab, wherever there is dua means any calling upon someone, there is an element of khudwa, except if you are commanding someone, that is a different case. Okay, but there is a level of khudwa. Or let's just increase this first scenario in the degree of humility and submission. Let's say a person calls Ahmed or his father, and or let's say his someone who is above him, that's father, or let's say his Shaykh, someone whom he reveres a lot, and asks him to please help him pay the hospital bill. Help him financially. Right? Now there is a lot of humility in this scenario, because now he is in trouble, he is going through a tough time, and he desperately wants help from a Shaykh financially. Not that he will help him through the unseen, financially. He wants him to lend him some cash so that he can pay the hospital bill. طيب. Okay. Let's start with the second scenario. According to the definition, خضوع اختياري يطلب به نفع غيبي. It's an act of humility and submission carried out willingly. يطلب به نفع غيبي, through which mostly. And why did we add mostly? because the Shaykh explained later, and I will inshallah explain to you what is the benefit of adding mostly here. But this is a separate topic, because you need to then focus on, again, 100% on that point, that why did we add mostly to the definition. So I will need you to focus again very intensely later on. But right now, just focus on خضوع اختياري يطلب به نفع غيبي. Just forget mostly and just focus on the one that the benefit that is being sought is unseen, a ghaibi, metaphysical benefit. According to this definition, the person, what this person is performing here, what he's doing, is it going to be considered an ibadah or not?
It's going to be considered an ibadah.
طيب ممتاز. Now can you check the three most important traits of ibadah, or three most important points in the definition? First is خضوع, second اختياري يطلب به نفع غيبي. Is there خضوع in this action? Is there humility? Is this an act of humility?
Yes.
Okay, well, ممتاز. Why is it an act of humility?
Because he's asking someone who's not alive.
لا خليك من alive. لا غير يعني just forget right now alive or not alive. Just the fact that he's asking. بس asking someone whom he sees above himself. Dua means to ask someone who's above you. Iltimas is from someone who is at your same level, like your very close friend. And amr is when you are above someone and you tell him to you command him. So there are three levels. In balagha, we always say dua is to ask for from someone who is above you. Iltimas, to ask someone in the same level as you. And amr, to ask someone who is below you. So when you ask your child, masalan, to bring you a glass of water, this is not dua. You're not saying, oh, he's humbling himself before me. The child is happy. My father humbled himself before me today. لا ما هكذا يصبح. لا ما هكذا يكون. بل هذا أمر. There is no element of humility here. This is أمر. But humility, where does it come? When you ask someone above you. So this wali, whom he reveres, whom he venerates, he considers him above himself. So he's asking him, there is this element of humility and submission. Mumtaz. Is it ikhtiyari, or is it someone forcing him? He's been coerced into doing so?
He's doing it willingly.
Willingly. طيب. يطلب به نفع غيبي. Is he expecting the wali to benefit him from the ghaib, or is he expecting the wali to come to life, first of all, and come and treat whatever problems his wife had, because of which she couldn't bear a child, or masalan, some other defects that he himself had, and treat him physically and give him some medicines and then go back to his grave? Which of the two is he expecting the wali to benefit him with?
The first one.
From the unseen, from the ghaib. إذن يا إخوان, هذا إذن عبادة. According to this definition, it's ibadah. Now, how did we come up with this definition? Because of observing different actions that have been mentioned in the Quran and Sunnah, and seeing noticing when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rules an action to be shirk and when he rules it to be mubah. This is called istiqra. Istiqra means to look at a number of cases and then to come to conclusions by looking at those cases. So when you look at the different cases in the Quran and Sunnah, you will find that whenever an action is considered an ibadah, it is from the actions that are performed to seek unseen benefit, ghaibi benefit. Okay, and this is why if you have learned Tawheed somewhere else as well, you will find this dabit of that you can ask someone as long as he's hayyun, hadirun, and qadir. Hayyun, hadir, qadir. Hayyun, he's alive, hadir, he's present, and qadir, and he's able to do so. You would find this definition everywhere, right? I think you must have heard of this before, but there are some objections that can be raised against hayyun, hadir, qadir. So as we go with Shaykh Rahman al-Muallimi, because his definition is even more precise and even more coherent and consistent. طيب ممتاز جدا أخي. well done, good يعني application of the of the definition. طيب الآن let's move on to scenario number 3. Person living in Mecca calls upon a person living in Riyadh. Now this person who is in Mecca, there is a fire in his home. Okay, now he calls this person in Riyadh, or he's invoking him or calling upon him, and this person is alive. Let's say his name is Ahmed. He's saying, يا شيخ أحمد أنقذني من النار. يا شيخ أحمد معاذ الله يقول يعني مثلا أجرني من النار وأنقذني من النار, save me from fire, etc. Or مثلا يعني okay, that's how he's doing it. So this person Ahmed is alive, and the person living in Mecca is saying, يا شيخ أحمد أنقذني من النار, save me from fire. طيب, is this ibadah or is it not ibadah? يلا, من who will apply the definition?
Like fire in his home, that's what you mean, right? Like fire as in like fire in the world, right?
Yeah. I mean, at his home, at his house, in his house.
So it's like asking for help, basically.
He's asking for help, but someone who is not present there in Riyadh, مثلا, and let's see. So is there khudu' in this or not?
Yes.
طيب, there is khudu' in this. Okay. Is it ikhtiyari?
Yes.
Yes, he's not being forced to ask that person in Riyadh named Ahmed. Okay, ممتاز. يطلب به نفع غيبي. Now it depends. If he is making a call to that person and he wants him to arrange fire brigade for him, that's different. This is not نفع غيبي. It's not metaphysical or غيبي benefit. However, if he thinks that this person is a great pious scholar مثلا, and he has been given powers by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to يعني alter what happens in this universe by himself, then he is expecting Shaykh Ahmed, who is in Riyadh, to help him from the unseen. That means he is asking an unseen benefit. He is seeking a benefit that is غيبي, a metaphysical benefit. Sahih? If that is the case, then what will be the hukum of this amal?
That it's not an ibadah.
It's an ibadah. يطلب به نفع غيبي. Yes, he is seeking a benefit from the unseen. نفع غيبي. He expects his Shaykh Ahmed to save him from the unseen. Allah has given him some special powers supernaturally. Okay, let's just remove the word unseen, metaphysical. Right here, supernatural benefit. To make it simple, to make it easier for you to understand. Right here, supernatural. Now, supernatural benefit is being sought. So if he expects Shaykh Ahmed to save him supernaturally, then this is going to be what? It's going to be al-ibadah, and hence is going to be shirk akbar. ممتاز جدا. طيب. However, if he expects مثلا him to save him by مثلا calling the fire brigade مثلا, or arranging some way of escape for him because of his contacts, etc., this is not supernatural, right? This is from the physical world. It's possible in the physical world. Hence, this will not be considered an ibadah. Or let's just simplify the scenario further. Let's say he's calling upon his neighbor. His neighbor is someone who can save him from this fire. He can enter the house and try to help him out of the house, etc. Help him get out of the house. If that is the case, then this will not be shirk akbar. However, if he believes that his neighbor will help him supernaturally, and he calls upon his neighbor, Ya Jari, anqidhni min an-nar. He's calling upon him, and he expects him to save him supernaturally, with some power that has been given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, according to his beliefs, what I'm saying. Then this will again be shirk akbar. Even if the neighbor can listen to him directly. Even if he can listen to him directly, but if this person expects him to save him supernaturally from the ghaib, then this will be considered an ibadah. ممتاز. طيب. Coming back to scenario number 1. طيب. من يطبق عليه التعريف? Is this ibadah or is it not ibadah? Is this shirk or not shirk?
This is not ibadah.
طيب لماذا؟ Is there خضوع or not? Is there not خضوع?
There's khudu'.
طيب اختياري. يطلب به نفع غيبي أم لا يطلب به نفع غيبي هنا؟ لا يطلب به. لا يطلب به نفع غيبي. He's not asking for a supernatural benefit. He's asking the Shaykh to help him with whatever money he has, come to the hospital and lend him some money so that he can pay the hospital bill. But he's not expecting him to help him supernaturally. So when you pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you expect ghaibi benefit, that Allah will help you from the ghaib. It's not that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will physically come to you and hand over the money to you. لا ما هكذا يعني يكون. بل يعني أنت ترجو من الله تعالى أن ينفعك بالغيب, from the ghaib. He will يعني benefit you or ward off some evil from you. And مثلا when you say, oh Allah اشفيني أو اشفي مرضانا, oh Allah يعني please cure my disease or cure the ill ones from amongst us. So do you expect that Allah will descend and treat them the way the way naturally people are treated by doctors? لا أبدا. بل نرجو أن الله عز وجل سيشفيهم بالغيب. Allah will give them the cure from غيب. Allah will cause them and arrange them or cause them to be cured from the غيب. So this aspect of غيبي نفع or نفع غيبي is very, very important. طيب. Let me give you another set of scenarios and inshallah then we are done with this definition, and then I'm going to move on to explain why we use the word mostly, and then inshallah we'll move on to the next question. But I want someone else to do the tatbiq, the application here in the next set of 3 scenarios. We have a person named Ahmed slaughters an animal to serve his guests some nice meat. Okay. We have a person named Zaid slaughters and let's say goat to honor his let's say his manager in his company that he works for as a guest in it, and he has invited his manager to his home and he's honoring him. He slaughters a goat, and from this act of this honor that he has given his manager, he expects to get a promotion. And he's not doing it for the sake of Allah. He's not honoring him to please Allah. Rather, he's honoring him to get a promotion or some raise. Okay. Even though this is very something that is despised by all of us, but we need to. It's not, might not be considered a shirk now. And then we have a person named, let's say, Amr, who slaughters a sheep to draw closer to a wali, so that he can get his wishes approved from Allah. Okay, draw closer to a wali. Fine. Okay, interesting. Now, someone else other than Rayyan. Let's start with scenario number 1. Is this act an act of shirk? He wants to honor his guests, so he's slaughtering the animal for the guests. I wouldn't have slaughtered this goat, except I'm slaughtering it only because I'm having guests at my place tonight. So I need to go and slaughter and prepare the meat for them. Is this an act of shirk? Someone other than Rayyan?
No, it wouldn't be.
Okay, apply the definition. Why wouldn't it be an act of shirk?
Okay, because even though he might be, doing it humbly, but the benefit is very physical, as he gets to feed his guests, and they are present in front of him.
Or maybe he doesn't even, he's not even expecting any benefit from them, just to honor them, just for the sake of Allah, مثلا. And now, so that is how it is, and there might not even be any khudur, because this act of slaughter, ya ikhwan, when it is performed as a ritual, then it is then that it has this khudur. You see, when someone does it for Allah and he's slaughtering and just striking the knife on the neck and spilling the blood, this is the ritual. This is an act of ibadah. So, great ibadah. But if it is not done for drawing closer to anyone, then it might not even be considered an act of humility. So I'm not sure whether it's khudu or not. Personally, I'm not sure. If I'm trying to implement the definition, I'm not sure whether it would be considered as khudu or not. But for sure, he's not seeking any ghaibi benefit. Hence, it is not an ibadah. Hence, it is not a shirk. طيب. Scenario number 3. Amr, who slaughters a sheep. نعم تفضل يا أخي.
Sorry to interrupt you. But I was just thinking that probably the phrase used over here, like metaphysical or unseen benefit, is being sought. I mean, the examples we have discussed, for example, where we were discussing a person calling somebody to, grant them a child. Like the child itself is a benefit which is not unseen. Maybe a proper or more appropriate phrase would be employing unseen means as well as an unseen benefit, because the benefit itself is not unseen yet. I mean, the benefit of that dua is a physical thing, physical child, for example, which is part of this world, but the means being employed, or the means he thinks are being employed by the wali, are unseen.
جميل جدا جميل جدا جميل جدا. Yeah, this I subhanallah, in some of the places I taught this definition, I would say this, seeking a benefit through unseen or metaphysical means. I used to use this means word and this phrase. However, subhanallah, some of them they started getting confused, and seeking a benefit, they thought that the means he refers to the way we ask the benefit or the way we seek the benefit. على كل حال, this is an important addition. Jazakallah khair. You can say مثلا here, through which mostly an unseen. You can say through which mostly benefit is sought, or benefit that would be gained through unseen means is sought. You can say like this. You can rephrase it and to say that through which an action through which mostly benefit that is gained through unseen means, or that happens, or that is acquired through unseen means, is sought. We can rephrase it. Well, أهم شيء الآن this is a naqs in the translation, and it's a flaw of my translation. It's not a flaw of the Shaykh's definition. So the translation, you can deal with it the way you want, so that you can understand it in the best way. But because with regards to the definition, خضوع اختياري يطلب به نفع غيبي, we wouldn't alter much with this, because it has been formed. It has been formulated by the Shaykh on the basis of some extensive research. So you can play around with the translation, ما في إشكال, according to what you understand from the definition. The Arabic, we will leave it as it is. So Jazakallah khair. That's a good addition. Jazakallah khair. Now, scenario number 3. Going back to scenario number 3. نعم أخي علي.
Sorry about that.
No, لا بأس.
Yeah, this would be considered ibadah, an act of ibadah, and major shirk.
Why?
Because
is there any khudu here?
There has to be a because it's a ritual, so he's probably most likely humbling himself
Yes.
in that act.
There is.
And
It's ikhtiyari
as well, and the means or the benefit that is ghaibi is that he has given the wali that authority to have that intercession or approval between him and his actions in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Now, even if it's not an authority, but he expects him to get it done, and from the ghaib, not physically asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he's not and he's drawing closer to the wali by this action himself, not by not like the worldly means. Mathalan, in the worldly means, mathalan, I give you money to do some work for me, mathalan. So it's not like he's giving him meat so that he could consume that meat and do some work for him. La, he wants to draw closer to him. He wants to please him, impress him, and he's seeking his pleasure, so that the wali gets things done for him. This will be considered as naf' ghaibi, and hence it will be shirk akbar. Mumtaz. Right. Coming to scenario number 2.
Yeah, this would be, this is not an act of ibadah, because the benefit is physical, which can be realized in form of his promotion. I mean, monetary benefit or benefit in status or whatever you want to give it.
Mumtaz. So the most of the most important part of the definition is this. يطلب به نفع غيبي. When it is نفع غيبي, when it is not نفع غيبي. طيب. Now I'm going to erase all of this, and now we are going to focus on, inshallah, the part, why we said mostly. Why did we add this qaid here, mostly? Because the Shaykh, in his explanation, he goes on to mention غالبا. With regards to نفع غيبي, the point that Brother Ali mentioned, in regards to the English, please alter it and clarify it for your own self, by yourself, in your notes. With regards to the Arabic part, نفع غيبي, in Arabic, there are a lot of purposes or a lot of ways in which a masdar can be described. If the masdar is being described, it's not necessary that the al-Manshurah, مثلا al-Manshurah bihi, the thing that you are getting as a benefit is غيبي. In Arabic we have more majal, and we have more room for majaz. نفع غيبي نفع حصل عن غيب أو نفع حصل عن طريق غيبي. So there is a lot of ta'wilat that we can make for the Arabic one. So that's why I encourage everyone to leave the Arabic as it is and just alter with the English one according to what you have understood from the definition. Now we're coming to the point again. Why did we add the word mostly? An action that is usually or mostly performed seeking benefit through the unseen, metaphysical, supernatural means. Focus is required here. There are some scenarios in which you might be seeking physical benefit, but the action that you are performing is an action of ibadah. This is important. What the Shaykh is saying in this definition is that there are set of actions, there are a few actions, there are a number of actions which are performed mostly for seeking benefit through non-physical or metaphysical means. These actions are ibadah. That's what the Shaykh is saying. These actions that are performed for this purpose are ibadah. They are ibadah at times, even if they are not performed for this very purpose. So we'll give you some scenarios for this. Scenario number 1 is a person named, let's give them some kafir name, a person named Mark. مثلا a person named Mark. He is told by another person named John, let them be kuffar, so that we don't attribute bad things to the Muslims. So John says to Mark, if you prostrate before me, if you perform sujood before me, I will give you these $10,000 that I have in my right hand. He has $10,000 in his hand at that very time. And he says, if you perform sujood before me, I will hand over this money to you. طيب. الآن هل هناك خضوع أم ليس هناك خضوع؟ هناك خضوع. There is خضوع here. There is خضوع. Is it اختياري? It's اختياري. لكن هل يطلب به نفع غيبي؟ لا. الآن he is not seeking unseen or a benefit through unseen or metaphysical means. He's not seeking benefit through غيبي means. But this still will be considered as shirk akbar. Because this situation in which he performs sujood, here the sujood will be considered an ibadah. It's not necessary for an action to be considered ibadah that every time it is performed for benefit through ghaibi means. Sometimes, even if it is performed for benefit through non-ghaibi means, for physical means, it will be considered as shirk. واضح? So sujood is an ibadah, it's established as an ibadah. So since sujood is established in ibadah, how did we establish sujood as an ibadah? By this definition. We saw that the sujood has khudu', it is and it's mostly done to seek benefit through unseen means. Now once we establish that sujood is ibadah, even if it is performed for physical benefit, then it will still be considered as ibadah. So this person Mark, he will be considered as mushrik akbar, mushrik shirkan akbar. Let me just repeat this with another example. This definition, ya ikhwan, is to determine which actions are ibadah. Once you determine an action to be ibadah, then even if it is performed in some cases, not in all cases, then even if it is performed for some physical benefit, then it will be considered as ibadah, as shirk. Now, another example is slaughtering a goat, a sheep, to draw closer to someone. The act of the slaughter, not the distribution of the meat, not the benefit that is gained from the meat. I'm saying the act of slaughter itself. The act of slaughter is an ibadah. Why is it an ibadah? Because it is mostly performed to seek benefit through ghaibi means. Mumtaz. With this definition, we establish the fact that dhabh and slaughtering is ibadah. طيب. Now, we have the second scenario that we are presenting here. Again, similar scenario. He says, مثلا, if you slaughter this animal for my sake, you spill blood, like the jinnat, the jinn, the jinn, the way they do the work for human beings is they ask humans to make some sacrifice. You make a sacrifice of a bird or of a child, a human being sometimes you bring the head of this or that, or blood of this or that, an owl. The jinn is alive and he's in front of you. And for him, the benefit that he's bringing to you, مثلا, he's bringing something for you, or he's causing someone to become ill, مثلا, he's doing it through physical means. Means that are possible for him. That's not from ghaib. Even though it's for us, we can't see, but for him it's not. We're not expecting him to do it from the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does it for us. But this action itself has been established as ibadah. Spilling blood, slaughtering to please someone, to get close to someone. This very action, not the meat, the action of slaughtering and spilling blood. طيب. Even if it is done for some physical benefit, like the scenario mentioned with Mark and John, person says, you slaughter it for me, I give you this $10,000, it will still be considered as shirk akbar. So this definition, barakallahu fikum, is used to establish whether an action is ibadah or not. Then if it is performed in the very same way, with the same humility, even for some other benefits, that is physical, then it will still be considered ibadah and shirk. This is true for some of the ibadah, some of the ibadah is not true for it. مثلا dua, يعني, it's not an act of mutlaq humility. So you cannot say that this is true for dua. This, the things, the scenarios that we mentioned for sujood and for dhabh, for slaughtering, they're not true for dua. But for sujood, for dhabh, for مثلا يعني other ibadahs that we can take examples of, this might be true. واضح يا إخوان? Is this clear inshallah? Why we added mostly to the definition?
Yes, Shaykh.
طيب. إذن يا إخوان نعم. إذن inshallah, I hope inshallah this definition is clear. How to apply this definition to establish whether an action is ibadah or not, it's also clear. And how sometimes some ibadahs, even if they are, and once they are established that they are ibadahs, if they are performed for some physical benefit, they will still be considered as ibadah and shirk akbar if they are being performed for someone besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I hope this mas'ala is also clear. So just to summarize, this definition mentioned here is inclusive of both ritual ibadahs and non-ritual ibadahs. And for ritual ibadahs, we needed a more specific definition that was khudu' ikhtiyari yutlab bihi naf'un ghaybi. The purpose behind defining ritual ibadah was to determine, was to be able to determine when an action is shirk and when it is not shirk. And that's it. Now, that's it for the fourth question. Any questions with regards to these masail that we discussed today, Ikhwan?
Shaykh, I do have a few questions. I don't know if you want to take them now or towards the end of the.
الظاهر يعني نحن الآن نتأخر كم نعم خلاص إذا نكتفي اليوم بهذا القدر يعني we'll just suffice with this for today because this mas'ala is also important, number 5, and I think we have used up our our quota for focus and concentration. This mas'ala number 5 also needs a bit of focus to understand the fine differences, subtle differences. But that's why inshallah we suffice with question 4, and you can ask your question. Barakallah fiqh. Now, I will not stop the recording because these questions might be some important questions that everyone will benefit from.
Okay, so Shaykh, my first question is somebody might argue that these definitions we are bringing in from for example the Shaykh you said is from the last century, so somebody might say all you guys claim is going back to the earlier sources, so how come for issues like these you are relying on definitions that are only like 100 years old? What I'm saying is that people are going to accuse people who claim that the best way to follow is the way of the Salaf, but when it comes to definitions and other issues like this, we are relying on definitions that are only 100 to 100 years old.
ممتاز. Okay, the answer to this question is wallahu a'lam, that this definition is not considered something as sacred to us. This is an attempt to simplify and ease the understanding of ibadah. Things that Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Umar radiallahu anhu, the other aslaf, the tabi'in and tabi'in might have understood without needing such an extensive explanation. You see, things that were there in their minds. They had this dawabit, these principles and qawa'id, maxims in their minds, so they would use it. But as time passes on, there is vague, ilm becomes sometimes vague. It becomes vague and unclear. So what do the ulama do? They contemplate and ponder over the nusus on the text of the Quran and Sunnah, and they come up with classifications, they come up with some maxims, they come up with some principles and definitions to make it easy for us to get to what Abu Bakr, Umar radiallahu anhu, and the Aslaf were upon. So this is min bab la mushahata fil istilah, to make a ta'rif we're not considering it a ta'rif that is sacred and you cannot move an inch from it, away from it. Why I was telling you not to alter it? Because as students, we look to benefit from the works of the scholars, and we respect the works of the scholars and someone who has conducted such an extensive research, so we would give it its weight. That's why I was asking the students not to alter this definition. But it does not mean that this definition is sacred. Tomorrow, if there is some if we come up with some scenario that that is an exception to this definition, we will say that this definition has some flaw in it. And there are people who still differ with regards to the definition of ibadah. So when it comes to depending on this definition, no, we're not depending on this definition. This definition is only for us students of knowledge method to determine in our minds whether something is an ibadah or not. Okay, so it's about taking help from the works of later scholars. It's not relying on their works alone. We want to get to the concepts and the ilm that the Salaf had, and if we find it difficult to get there, we take the help of those after them who have made the ilm of the Salaf easier for us. So that's it. So there is no harm in benefiting. This is benefiting from the later scholars. That's not relying upon them for the interpretation of the nusus. لا أبدا ما هكذا. هو Shaykh Abdur Rahman Yahya al-Muallimi, when he's putting this definition, this is an attempt to interpret the understanding of the Salaf, the applications of the Salaf, the way they put it in their tafasir, why a particular qawm was considered mushrik, why they were not considered mushrikeen, and he contemplated those cases and the tafasir of the Salaf, and he concludes that this is the thing that I find that this is the definition of ibadah. So I don't find it possible for anyone to object that we are relying upon a later scholar and we are not going back to the madhab of the Salaf. We're just benefiting from him now. And as we mentioned before, classifications, definitions, terminologies, the door to this is open. The door to this is open. As long as you are only describing the haqiqah that was known to the people before you. Definition, what is the definition? You are describing the reality of something. Those before you did not describe it in words, but they had it in their minds. You came later on because matters became vague and unclear to the people, so you describe it in words. It's just the same haqiqah. You are putting it in words, they had it in their hearts and in their minds, and they were applying it, you are applying it as well. That's it now.
Barakallah fiqh. I do have another question, which is, I think, maybe this question is related to probably something we discussed earlier. How would we, how would we define unseen, metaphysical? And for example, like if somebody is, doing an act, a man, for example, is doing an act so that he could gain a woman's love. Now, love is, in our eyes, it's not something that's physical, like it's not something we can see, but I can say it's not ghaibi as well. Is there like a I don't know, more better way to say what is ghaibi and what is not?
Can you explain this example that you mentioned a little more? A person is doing something to gain a woman's love, he wants to impress her so that she starts loving him. That's what
she starts getting closer to him. So for example, he does I don't know, he goes to her I don't know, with all humility and buys her flowers, but like he's the love itself that he is looking to gain is not physical. Probably the result might be that he might get some intimate relation out of it, but the initial step of finding love in the heart of the woman itself is not physical.
When we say the simple answer to this is when you say naf'un ghaibi, يعني we mean something that is out of the physical world. يعني by the physical world يعني out of the world, the أسباب that have been known to us يعني as that are يعني, how should I put this? يعني not necessarily something that you can touch and see. يعني when you say physical world يعني the world around us, the natural world. This is part of the natural world. يعني that a person, we do good to him, he loves you for the good that you have done for him, etc. This is part of the natural world. When we say supernatural, we mean something out of the natural world, out of the realms of the natural world. So مثلا يعني Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala miraculously saving Musa alayhi salam مثلا, or يعني whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds to the prayers of any person, and it's not, you cannot explain how Allah helped you naturally. It's a supernatural process. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala eases for you the asbab of that help that you ask from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, etc. So you can, yani by ghaibi, it's not necessarily that something yani that you, if you cannot see it, will be considered ghaibi. And even if you cannot see it, it might not be considered as ghaibi, because it is part of the natural world. So when we say ghaibi, we mean something that is supernatural, out of the natural world. Now,
Barakallah feek. I have a final question, inshallah.
Labas.
Which is with regards to some people, they claim that, for example, the acts of ibadah like sujood, if they are done by the person without him intending for it to be an act of worship, it's not shirk. Is that is that correct to say it, or is it something that is wrong?
Jameel. With regards to sujood, yani, what is correct about sujood is there are two types of sujood. There is sujood al-ta'zim, sujood al-tahiyya al-ta'zim, and then there is sujood al-ibadah. The sujood that is done just to express your respect and to honor someone, or ta'zim, express your reverence and veneration and his status in your heart, مثلا. Like the sujood that was done to the kings, the sujood that the brothers of Yusuf alayhi salam, his parents did to Yusuf alayhi salam, etc. The sujood that Adam alayhi salam, that the malaika was asked to do to Adam alayhi salam. These are sujood al-ta'zim. This in our sharia is haram, but it's not shirk. It's not shirk. If the sujood is done in this sense, that is to greet someone, or done just to honor him or show respect to him, like the way that people bow down to queen or to the queens or the kings. This is haram, but it's not shirk, because yani Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not possible that he would command the malaika to commit shirk. Allah yani, when the mushrikeen, when they were asked يعني وإذا فعلوا فاحشة قالوا وجدنا عليها آباءنا والله أمرنا بها. They said whenever they do something fahisha, they say we found our fathers upon this methodology and Allah commanded us to do so. So when they attributed this to Allah, what did Allah say? He said, قُلْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَأْمُرُ بِالْفَحْشَاءِ. Allah never ordains and commands يعني matters that are يعني that comprise nudity or obscene actions or anything that is يعني considered as despicable. So shirk is even worse than nudity and any type of fahisha. It's the يعني أسوأ ويعني أقبح الفواحش, shirk. So it's not possible that Allah would command the malaika to do shirk, right? If that's the case, then this sujood is not shirk, it's sujood ta'zim. In our ummah, it has been prohibited because to close the path to prevent it from leading to shirk akbar. It has been prohibited for this. The other type of sujood is sujood ibadah, that is done not to honor, not to show respect, but to draw closer to someone, to seek some benefit from him. There is a very subtle difference between the two types of sujood. But when it's said that a sujood, now after having made this distinction between the two types of sujood, we come to the second question or second part of the question, that is it correct to say that a sujood, if it is not done for the sake of ibadah, it will not be ibadah? No, this is not correct. It is not necessary for an action to be ibadah that you intend ibadah by it. What do I mean by this? Sometimes a person might not know this is ibadah, but the haqiqah of ibadah applies to it. يعني مثلا, someone is beseeching and invoking a wali, and grant me the child and grant me this and that, and طيب, or give me يعني مثلا cure my disease, etc. And he said, no, it's not ibadah. This is just wasila. This is not the ibadah, because according to me, ibadah is when someone does when someone benefits another independently of Allah. And right now, I think that Allah has given this wali these powers to benefit me. So according to me, it's not ibadah, and hence I'm not a mushrik. لا يا أخي. Remember this قاعدة. الأسماء لا تغير الحقائق. يعني the names do not change the realities of things. If the reality of what you are doing is ibadah, then even if you don't consider it an ibadah, it will be counted as an ibadah, and you will be ruled according to the ruling will be determined according to the reality of what you are doing. So مثلا, if you say al-khamr, anything that the khamr that was made haram in the Quran was only a particular type of khamr, and that existed at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and the alcohol that I consume in our times, this is not haram. طيب, هذا ما يغير الحقيقة. Even if you don't call it khamr, it doesn't mean it's not khamr. The haqiqah is determined, the reality, the definition of something is determined by the sharia. If the description given to us by sharia applies to what you are consuming right now, and it's khamr, then we will be treated and dealt with accordingly. And hence, if the purpose that he's doing the sujood for, and he has this, he's seeking closeness, and he's seeking some benefit, etc., the definition of ibadah applies to it, then even if he does not consider it an ibadah, will not benefit him, and we will side with what the sharia has determined as the haqiqah of something, how the sharia has defined it. Wallahu a'lam. واضح يا أخي? Is that clear, inshallah?
Yeah, it's a bit clearer, but just to follow up on this one. For example, like we have in in subcontinent, okay, that's where I've seen, probably in other parts of the world as well, like people going to shrines and carrying out sujood on the grave itself. Now, I mean, in recent time, one of the speakers on social media has come out and said that if the person does not intend for it to be an ibadah, or he does not know, if he is ignorant of the ruling on it, his act is not considered as shirk. So what I've understood from you is that even though the person might not know it and he does not intend for it to be an ibadah, but it's still considered an act of shirk due to the nature of the act itself. Is that correct?
Due to the nature of the act, it will be considered an ibadah because of what he intended, the nature of his action was in complete accordance with what the ibadah has been defined as by the sharia. That is why it will be considered an ibadah, whether he calls it ibadah, whether he calls it wasila, whether he gives it whatever XYZ name, it will remain ibadah, and it has nothing to do with his knowledge of whether this action is ibadah or not. This will have no influence or effect whatsoever on the hukum of the amal. What about his his akhirah, or what about his ruling in the dunya? The contemporary scholars, they differ a little bit whether we will consider him to be a mushrik or some say they say that shirk for sure, but whether he will be considered a mushrik or not, as-sahih, he will be considered mushrik, because this is asl-ud-din, this is the basis of the religion. And with regards to the base of the religion, as established by Imam al-Tabari wa Shafi'i wa ghayrihim min al-ulama, as established, and when it's the basis of the religion and the fundamentals of religion, there is no room for ignorance with regards to the fundamentals of religion. And just like there can't be an atheist Muslim, how can you not believe in Allah and also be a Muslim at the same time? Right? It's not possible to be an atheist and a Muslim at the same time. because you just did away with the fundamental of religion, that is to believe in the existence of Allah. So likewise, there cannot be a mushrik and a Muslim at the same time. This is the sahih opinion from the opinions of the scholars. You cannot be a mushrik and Muslim at the same time, because Tawheed is the fundamental of Islam. That is what Islam is all about. Islam is not about attributing or ascribing to a certain people or a certain religion named Islam. And ascribing to a religion was not the fundamental of the religion. Following the contents and following what it teaches is the fundamental of religion. Tawheed is the fundamental, is the most important fundamental of Islam, and hence the one who does away with the Tawheed, then he will be considered a mushrik in the ahkam of the dunya. With regards to the ahkam of the akhirah, then amruhu ila Allah. If he was truly ignorant, then Allah will test him in the akhirah and he will deal with him accordingly. So, yani, the haqiqah is never changed. Now you can go pray Isha for sure, Yahya. Even I have to go pray Isha now in about 2 minutes. So the haqiqah will not be changed because of the names, because of what how you name something. This will not be changed. However, masalan, if he's not performing ibadah, let's say he dropped his key near the grave, so he just bowed down to pick up his keys. This is not an ibadah. He did not intend. This is not yani what the ibadah was about. Just to yani, ibadah is when you are actually intending to bow down before something or some grave, not for yani not just these coincidences. Yani, this will not be considered as ibadah. Now.
Barakallah fi, ya Shaykh. I don't know if we have time for one more question.
ما في إشكال, one more question بس إن شاء الله بعد كذا في يعني سنذهب للصلاة.
Or we can leave it for next.
لا one more question إن شاء الله يعني just if it is short إن شاء الله.
Yeah, but I just wanted to. I mean, there's a term we hear being used, which is like the scholars say, this is an act of shirk. How does an act of shirk contrast with shirk itself?
كيف يعني act of shirk contrast with shirk itself?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes there's a distinction being made, like this is an act of shirk.
But he's not a mushrik.
Yeah, the person is not a mushrik. Rather, the ruling is not being judgment is not being passed on the person, but on the act itself. If you can clarify this one.
Yeah, they do this because they say that person is ignorant, so he will be given this udhr bil jahl, yani he will be excused for his ignorance, and he will not be considered, and he will not be ruled as a mushrik, even though he has committed shirk. His act was an act of shirk. But as I told you, yani this is yani the ruling. Well, yani this is a khilaf whether the ruling will apply to him in the dunya or not. Sahih being the sahih is that if what he performed, what he did was actually an act of shirk, because he invalidated, nullified one of the fundamentals, the ultimate yani basis of Islam, then he will be considered a mushrik and he will be ruled in accordance with it. And inshallah, I can explain a little more on this, yani when an act is considered as kufr and when the person is not considered kafir, and whether this statement itself, is it correct or not. Yani there are some fine details to this sentence as well, to say that it's an act of kufr and it's not, a person is not kafir. The reality is that in those cases in which a person is not kafir, the act is not supposed to be considered as kufr. And inshallah we can explain this later on, inshallah, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, in the next durus, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala.
بارك الله فيك يا شيخ.
فيكم بارك الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.